Hello, everybody, and welcome to Chapter 8 of Book 2 of the Royal Ranger series, The Red Fox Clan. Let's go ahead and get into it. The following day, Cassandra hosted a fair in the parklands outside the castle walls so that the entire district could welcome Maddie home properly. All of the castle staff were there, along with those of the guards who were off duty, and the residents of the local village, who turned out en masse. In addition, local nobles and other villagers from 10 kilometers around made the journey to Castle Araluen for the big day. They weren't disappointed, even though some of them walked all the way to get there. There were massive cooking pits, full of glowing charcoal, with lambs, boar, and sides of beef turning slowly on spits over them, operated by muscular, sweating castle kitchen staff, who paused in their labor only long enough to allow the cook's apprentices to slice juicy pieces of roasted meat from the outside of the slowly turning carcasses. A few meters away, racks of brown, crusty pastries and pies were on offer as well. There were stalls selling fruit and brightly colored puddings for those with a sweet tooth, and barrels of wine and ale were propped up on trestles to ease the collective thirst. For the younger attendees, there was lemon-flavored water, sweetened with sugar, a rare treat for many of the village children, and one that they took full advantage of. There was entertainment as well, with jugglers, acrobats, jongleurs, and musicians scattered at intervals throughout the park. And of course, there was the usual array of sideshows and stalls offering tests of skill, such as hoopla, where a careful observer might have noticed that the wooden hoops looked suspiciously smaller than the prizes they had to be thrown over to win. Apples floated in a barrel for people to dunk for, blowing bubbles and snorting water as they attempted to secure one of the slippery, bobbing pieces of fruit from the water, often immersing their entire head in the barrel as a result. Young men from the village could test their strength against a huge, heavily muscled, bald man in a ragged leopard skin loincloth. They would sit on opposite sides of a bench and arm wrestle him. But he was a cunning competitor, with skill exceeding even his brute strength, and a sense of timing that invariably allowed him to launch the first attack in the contest. He rarely lost. A Punch and Judy tent provided shamefully violent entertainment for the younger children, who shrieked with laughter as Judy belabored her unfortunate husband with a cudgel made of layers of split wood, which gave off a very satisfying crack whenever she made contact. More shrieks came from a stall where older children were invited to pin the tail on a donkey. The contestants found it more entertaining to peek below their blindfold and stab the pin violently into the oversized backside of the fat knight who was leading the donkey in the colorful illustration. One contestant, overcome with the spirit of the whole thing, managed to shove her pin into the behind of the unfortunate carnival worker who was running the stall. More shrieks greeted that effort, including a very loud one from the victim, who didn't see it coming. Among the visiting noblemen and knights, Horace spied Sir Gerald Walden of Tonbridge Manor. He approached the elderly knight and nodded a friendly greeting. "Sir Gerald," he said, "I owe you my thanks for assisting my daughter." Sir Gerald, who had just bitten into a hot pie, held up a hand in apology as he negotiated the hot meat and gravy and the delicious, flaky pastry. He gulped, burning his tongue and the roof of his mouth as he swallowed the mouthful, then had to take a deep draught on the tankard of ale he held in his left hand before he could reply. "Your pardon, my lord," he mumbled, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. Horace smiled and waited patiently. He'd had no intention of embarrassing the older knight. "Take your time, Sir Gerald," he said. "There's no rush." Sir Gerald swallowed another mouthful of ale to cool his scalded mouth, then made a small bobbing movement that was halfway between a bow and a curtsy. "I meant to say, my lord, I was delighted to be of service to Princess Madeline," he finally managed to enunciate. Horace gave him a moment or two to settle down before continuing. "If you like, I'll send some men to take those ruffians off your hands. I wouldn't want you burdened with them." No burden, my lord. They're more than earning their way. We've had a lot of heavy laboring that needs doing around the village, and they're taking care of it. My people are enjoying having their services available. Only this morning, they cleaned out the cesspit by the inn. Hasn't been done for some time, and my villagers were happy to have somebody else do it for them. Horace had been impressed by Maddie's intelligent solution to the matter of punishment for the would-be robbers. Far better to have them performing menial and necessary tasks around the village than undergo the more drastic punishment of hanging or removing a hand from the guilty party. Very well, he said, but make sure you let me know if they become a nuisance, or if you run out of cesspits to empty. I'll do that, my lord, Sir Gerald replied, taking another bite of his pie, which had cooled sufficiently to make that a more comfortable matter. Horace reached out and touched his forearm. No need to my lord me, Sir Gerald, he said. I'm no lord. I'm a simple knight, like yourself. You can address me as Sir Horace. Horace was a staunch egalitarian. He had no use for high-flying titles that he considered he hadn't earned. Sir Gerald nodded several times. Yes, Sir Horace, he amended. He found it difficult to believe that a man married to the future queen of the realm wouldn't adorn himself with titles and decorations. But he'd heard that Sir Horace was, at heart, a simple, unassuming man. Unassuming, perhaps, but still the deadliest knight in the kingdom. Horace nodded and moved off. He'd seen Maddie through the crowd, heading for the archery range at the foot of the slope, with the ground leveled out and allowed room for targets and butts to be set up. Maddie had paid the stallkeeper a 5-penny piece for 3 shots, and was studying the bow and arrows available for use with a critical eye. Several of the bow limbs were warped, the weapons being not much better than the one that had been used to threaten her the previous day. The arrows were missing fletching. Most of them only had 2 vanes attached, and many of the shafts were twisted. Most of those paying to compete didn't seem to notice. Their eyes were on the array of rich prizes that were available for a good score. Bows twanged, and arrows skittered off toward the targets 30 meters away. Many of the arrows twisted in flight and slid past to impact the straw bales, acting as a backstop behind the targets. Others plunged downward after only a few meters, burying their points in the soft turf. The married couple running the stall looked highly pleased with the results so far. No good archer would attempt to shoot with the shoddy bows they had on offer, which meant their customers were all people who knew little or nothing about archery. Maddie selected a bow that had more or less even limbs, with only a slight warp in the lower one. She scanned the arrows on offer, and quickly chose 3 that were almost straight and had full sets of flights. She tested the draw weight to the bow. It couldn't have been more than 30 pounds. She'd need to aim high over a 30-meter range. She set an arrow on the string. 3 arrows in the red circle to win a prize, my lady, said the stallkeeper's wife. The red circle was the innermost circle of the target. Don't show off, said a voice close by. She turned and saw her father standing just behind her. Remember, he continued, you're supposed to be a helpless young maiden, not a dead shot. She smiled lazily. Then, barely seeming to aim, she drew and shot in one clean movement. The arrow thudded into the center of the red circle. Ooh, I hit it, she squealed, in what she imagined sounded like girlish excitement, dropping the bow and clapping her hands with joy. Horace raised his eyes to heaven. Ham, he said softly. She grinned at him and took up her second arrow, noting that while she had been looking away, the stallkeeper had substituted a very warped example in place of the shaft she'd selected. She knocked and drew back, holding the bow awkwardly and pinching the nock of the arrow between her forefinger and thumb. She let her bow hand waver with the strain, frowned heavily, and aimed for a dead center shot, trusting that the arrow would never manage such a result. She shot. The arrow flipped away, twisting in the air so that it flashed past the right side of the target, burying its head and the wall of straw bales behind it. "Oh, I missed," she squealed in disappointment. Horace rolled his eyes again. "Is there a prize for hitting the hay bales?" she asked hopefully. "3 arrows in the red circle for a prize, my lady," intoned the stall-keeper's wife stolidly. Surreptitiously, her husband was reaching for the remaining straight arrow, hoping to substitute another bent shaft. Without seeming to notice, Mattie reached down and picked up the arrow before he could take it. Smoothly, she knocked it and shot. This time, the arrow thudded into the red circle of the target next to hers. She turned a winning smile on the stall-keeper. "Is that worth anything?" she said. He shook his head. "3 arrows in your own red circle for a prize, my lady," he said, offering her 3 more shafts. "Care to buy another 3? She shook her head. "I think I had beginner's luck," she said, smiling sweetly, "and the bows seem awfully dangerous." Beside her, Horace groaned. She gave him a conspiratorial smile, and then walked away, arm in arm, heading back up the slope toward the castle. The afternoon was drawing on, and the shadows were growing longer. There was a cool nip in the air as well. "Enjoying yourself?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, it's fine to see everyone again. A lot of old faces I've been missing." She looked around the crowded park, smiling happily. She knew that in a couple of days she would become bored with the restrictions of castle life and her position, and be longing for the freedom and activity of life as a ranger. But for now, she was content. "You look as if you've used a bow before," a voice said behind her. She turned to see the speaker, and was pleasantly surprised. He was in his mid-20s, tall and lean, with broad shoulders. He was clean-shaven, with a strong, square jaw, straight nose, and even, white teeth, which she could see because he was smiling. He was handsome, undoubtedly so. His hair was dark blonde, and slightly shorter than was fashionable. His eyes were clear blue, with a mischievous twinkle to them. It was that, she thought, more than anything else, that made him attractive. She noticed he was dressed in the uniform of the palace guard, a captain, judging by the silver rank insignia on his right shoulder. Instinctively, she liked him. "Just luck," she said, returning the smile. "Beginner's luck." He cocked his head to one side, and those eyes told her he didn't believe her, but he let her get away with the pretense. "If you say so." He nodded a respectful greeting to Horace. "Good afternoon, Sir Horace," he said. "I take it this is the Princess Madeline we've been waiting for?" "Afternoon, Damon," Horace replied. "Yes, this is her. Mattie, this is Damon. One of our brighter young officers. Damon, this is Princess Madeline." Damon came to attention and bowed his head briefly in her direction. Mattie was pleased he didn't perform an elaborate sweeping bow, with one leg pushed forward, and his arm tracing a half-circle in the air. She was always vaguely suspicious of such overblown actions. "Delighted to meet you, Your Highness," he said. His eyes continued to twinkle, as if he were sharing some secret joke with her. His manner was friendly, but respectful. He wasn't overawed by her rank, or the presence of her father. She liked that. Damon was obviously a young man, confident in his own abilities. "Call me Mattie," she said, inclining her head to him in return. "All my friends do." "Then I'm pleased to be included among them," he said. "I hope I'll see more of you while you're back with us." "I'm sure you will," Mattie said. Horace had been eyeing the two of them during all this. They were obviously attracted to each other. Not surprising, he thought. They were both attractive young people. He felt a surge of fatherly protectiveness. He hadn't had to deal with Mattie and boys before. It was a new experience for him. "Perhaps Damon will find time to take you hunting while I'm gone," he said. "I'll make time," the young captain said. "I'm eager to see you shoot again, with a decent bow next time." "The first shot was the merest fluke," she said. "Actually, I prefer the sling as a weapon." Damon nodded reflectively. "Like your mother," he said. "I hear she's an excellent shot." "I'm better," said Maddie boldly. But then, I have more time to practice. I'm not busy running a kingdom. I hope to see you demonstrate your skill, Damone said. He looked to Horace. If you'll excuse me, sir, I'm on duty at the 4th hour, so I'd better get back to the castle. Princess Maddie, he said, I'll be seeing you again. I look forward to it, Maddie told him. Damone turned and strode toward the castle, his long legs eating up the distance. Maddie looked at her father, noticing the slightly bewildered look on his face. He's nice, she said. Where did he come from? I don't remember him. He joined us about 6 months ago, Horace told her. He's very bright. He's already been promoted twice. Will he be going with you and Gillen? No, her father said. He'll be here, in command of the garrison. Maddie's smile widened. Good, she said. All right, that is going to conclude Chapter 8. Thank you to everyone who joined me. I will see each of you next time in Chapter 9. God bless, and have a good one.